Hey guys, it's me Coral. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here with the books that I read this month in January. It was a pretty good reading month for me. I read a lot more than I thought I would. So the reading stats for this month, because I always love doing this, I ended up finishing 9 books in total, but there are 3 other books that I'm in the middle of. One of them being Dead House by Don Kurtagich. This is a YA horror book and I'm a little over halfway. I probably could have finished it in like the last couple days of the month that I had, but I don't know. It's like not bad. The central conflict is pretty interesting, but there are just like these parts that it's like, I just don't care about this, but then something interesting will happen, so I continue reading it. So I'm not really sure how I'm gonna feel about this by the time I finish it, but it's all right for now. I'm also right smack dab in the middle of The Devil in the Deep, which is an anthology. I think it's The Devil in the Deep, but it's an anthology. I'm reading it on my Kindle, and that is about spooky stories set in the water with the ocean, something like that. You know, things along those lines. And I really like it so far. So there's that. And also I've started Brandon Sanderson's Oathbringer. That is so good so far. I cannot... It's really hard to take breaks from that book because I just want to know what's going to happen. It's such a great fantasy book. So yeah, that's the 3rd one in the series. The 4th one's coming out this year. So I'm hoping to, I don't know, because now I'm like, well, if I read the 4th one too fast, I'm going to have to wait a long time for the 5th one. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that. Just people who read problems. So of the books I did finish this month, the 9 that I finished, there was 3 books that I would probably consider historical fiction. Some of these are like, they kind of span more than one genre, but I'm putting one of these is for sure historical fiction. The other one might be like historical thriller, and then the other one might be like paranormal historical horror? I don't know. So 3 historical fiction, 1 that was straight up fantasy, 4 horror books, 1 true crime book, and 1 that I think I would categorize as paranormal. In total, I read 3,722 pages, which is bananas, and that's about 120 pages a day. As far as the years these books were published, my oldest one was published in 1980. Then we go all the way to 2010, 2012, 2015, 3 books that were published in 2018 and 2 that were published in 2019. So no new releases, although 1 was published like right at the end of 2019. So like basically it's a new release. As far as my star ratings go, I had 2 books that were 2 stars, 2 books that were 3 stars, 3 books that were 4 stars, and 2 books that were 5 stars. So pretty much spread across the board. My average rating is 3.5 stars. So that's not bad. That's actually like technically better than average because 3 is average. The formats I read that I finished at least, 8 were full-length novels and 1 was an audiobook. There were 8 adult books and 1 young adult book. Now I can get into talking about these magical creatures. So first we have Maynard's House. This was an old horror book. This was featured in Paperbacks from Hell, and I'm including this in a trope video that I'm doing later this year, so I'm not gonna tell you about it, but I thought it was pretty good. Next I have 2 books that I just reviewed in my latest trope video. So let's see, this was Breed by Chase Novak. This was published in 2012. And very basically, because if you want a more in-depth conversation about it, you can watch my trope video, but very basically, this is about a couple who do a weird infertility treatment and like things kind of go bananas. And also The Damned by Andrew Pyper. This was published in 2010. I think my old cat's going senile, so he has like a witching hour now where he just walks around and meows and meows. And unless I hold him on my lap, he just keeps doing it. This was published, just kidding, this was published in 2015. And very basically, this one is about a guy who has a near-death experience, and that event also killed his twin sister, and now she's like come back to haunt him. Short and sweet. Has my camera been focusing? Because I just noticed that it wasn't focused on my stupid dumb face. Next I have The Institute by Stephen King. This, I don't really know how other people felt about this, but I will say that I really liked it. I'm trying to be more discerning with my 5-star ratings. Like, I'm trying to think in my head, like, is this going to be one of my favorite books of all time? Then it probably deserves a 5-star. And this one, while being so, so good, and like maybe last year or a year before that, I would have given this 5 stars, but I'm gonna say 4 stars because it was very, very good. I would recommend it based on how much I liked it, I guess, but it's not one of my favorites. This was published in 2019. It's Stephen King's most latest release, and I'd say it's more paranormal than anything else. I wouldn't even say this is really like a thriller. It's definitely not a horror book, but it was really good. It's about a young boy named Luke. He is a very smart kid. He's like 12 years old and trying to get into like, I don't know, I can't remember. Something like MIT or Princeton or Harvard or some crazy shit like that. And like, he might be able to do it because he's a very intelligent little guy. But his life is put on hold when he is abducted from his house in the middle of the night and brought to this place called the Institute, where there is testing on children who have telekinetic or telepathic abilities. I really liked this. I thought the characters were so good. I really think that Stephen King does characters who are children so good. Luke is such a like sweet, smart young man. There are friends that he makes at the Institute who are also just like strong, awesome kids, and yeah, I would recommend this. I think even like the ending was pretty good, and I think that's the fault I find in not all of, but some of Stephen King's stuff. Sometimes he just doesn't nail the ending, but I thought this one was really well written. Next, we have Rust and Stardust by T. Greenwood. And this is, it's kind of hard to put this in a genre. It takes place over the late 40s and early 50s. It is based on a true story, something that really happened. But obviously, the author was not there to witness everything that happened in those years, so it's speculation based on true events, I'd say. And it's also because it involves a young girl who is kidnapped and held captive for an amount of years, I'd say probably it's a thriller. So like historical thriller, definitely not nonfiction, but it is based on a true story. And that is The Life of Sally Horner. And man, this book was devastating from start to finish, I think. It was so sad. I could not put it down. I couldn't stop thinking about poor Sally. When she is 11 years old, she gets abducted by a man who is posing as a FBI agent. Man, there's just like a sequence of events that happens, and he's just able to just take her, and there's no question about it at first. I don't want to give too much away because I think that this was a really great book, and I think more people should read it because it was captivating and heartbreaking. So I don't want to give too much of the plot away, but she's held captive for a number of years, and man, I just like want to punch this dude in the dick so hard, and oh my god. I don't know. It was just really hard to read, and a lot of that is because the way she's taken, it's like not totally a against her will and against her mother's will at first because of the lies that this guy has told. So it's really hard to read about this little baby girl like blaming herself and the mother blaming herself back when, you know, people didn't... True crime nowadays, I feel like so many of us are more aware of the dangers of strangers and the lies that people can tell, and that we don't have to trust people just because they say that they are an authority figure, and we really need to even check to make sure that they're not lying about stuff like that. And that was just really unheard of back then. So it was really hard to read, especially like having my own daughter is like, man, I can't imagine the just amount of blame that this mother must have put on herself. And it's even more heartbreaking that, I mean, these were true events. It was really hard to read, but it was so good, and I'm really looking forward to picking up more of T. Greenwood stuff. She's written quite a few books, and I've never heard of any of them except for Rust and Stardust, so holy shit. If you need something hard-hitting, this is definitely one to look at. Okay, this is one of my least favorite books this month. This is The Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White, and I just didn't like it that much. This is supposed to be sort of like a retelling of King Arthur's life once Guinevere becomes a part of his life. So in this story, Guinevere isn't really who she says she is. She is kind of a witch, I guess, who is purposely pretending to be Guinevere because Guinevere is supposed to marry King Arthur, and King Arthur knows about this. He knows that she isn't really the real Guinevere, but he needs help keeping his kingdom safe from some other witch. And I don't know, I just am really actually very disappointed in how this went, especially because Kiersten White wrote one of my very favorite series that I just finished this month. So I will talk about that in a minute. I don't know. The difference between this main character who this is supposed to be kind of like a feminist take on the Guinevere story even, and I just like could not, I don't know, she was so frail and delicate, and not that women can't be strong women and like outwardly be frail and delicate, but it was just like she was so whiny and she was scared of fucking everything, and it just wasn't... I was expecting a much stronger female leader than what we got, and there was another character that I was really interested in, and then I feel like the plot for them got all ruined, and like I'm upset with how that went. And yeah, I just don't think... I was really excited for this one too, and I don't think I'm going to continue on with the series. So yeah, there's that. Next I have The Hunger by Alma Katsu. This is another book that's like fiction based on true events. So this is kind of a reimagining, I guess, of what might have happened to the Donner Party when they were stranded up in the mountains over winter. And I really liked this. I gave it 4 stars. This is, like I said, about the Donner Party. However, there is a really cool like sprinkling of Native American inspired horror. I thought it was good. I feel like it stayed pretty true to the real life people who were involved in this and the events that took place. She definitely like used that as a path to build this bigger story, and it was really fun. I know some people didn't like it because of the pacing. I can understand that. It is more of a quiet horror. It's not really in your face, although there are some pretty spooky parts, so I really liked this. Okay, 2 more books. This is Bright We Burn by Kiersten White, and this is the series I was talking about that I finished this month. This is, I think it was called the Conqueror saga, and the first book in it is called Anti-Darken. And this is another reimagining I guess the last couple have been like that, huh? And it's like, what if Vlad Dracul was really a woman? And I like this because, like the books before it, it took real people from history and kind of built this story among them, and the characters are so rich and well developed. To give you kind of a synopsis of the first book, it's about a young girl named Lotta. She has a little brother named Radu, and their father is the prince of a little country called Wallachia. Wallachia is supposed to be like a vassal state, so they're supposed to be kind of following the rules of the stronger, bigger Ottoman Empire. And that's kind of contentious because there are a lot of cultural differences between the Ottomans and the people from Wallachia. And so he's kind of, their father's kind of strong-armed into having his children go and be raised by the Ottomans in Turkey. And so the first book is a lot about that, and it really the rest of the books follow their entire lives. Lotta is really like a strong, independent woman who doesn't need no fucking man, and she is so just one of the best characters I think I've ever read. And she, despite being raised by the Ottomans, really feels like her home is Wallachia and that's where she wants to be. And she feels like she should be the leader because her brother doesn't want to be. So, I mean, that's her conquest. And she is such a great character, which I think is part of the reason why when I read the Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White this month, I was like, there's so just like a massive difference between how badass these ladies were, and I was expecting somebody who was not a wimp, I guess. Yeah, this was the ending of this fantastic series. I thought it was so good, and I'm really sad that I'm not going to be spending any more time with these characters. Okay, and the last book I'd like to talk about is The People Who Eat Darkness by Richard, what's his name? Sorry, Richard Lloyd Perry. I knew that there was a Lloyd, but then I couldn't remember. I don't know. Anyways, this is a true crime book that takes place in Japan. This is about a young woman named Lucy Blackman who goes missing in Japan, and kind of, you know, the investigation towards her disappearance. She was employed as something called a hostess, which is a little bit different than our hostesses here in the US. In Japan, the hostesses are women who work at kind of like nightclubs, and they're there as kind of companions for the men who come in to talk and to drink with and to have a good time. Like, the men go to these specific clubs to interact with these women. Lucy Blackman was from the UK, so when she disappeared, it seemed to her parents back in the UK that the Japanese authorities weren't taking it very seriously, so it very quickly became an international sensation, basically, because the parents generated a lot of publicity about it in order for the Japanese authorities to finally take action. And not to say that they're incompetent, but as it's explained in the book, they don't really deal with stuff like this. It focuses a lot on the culture in Japan around like this nightclub scene, and I found that very interesting. The author is a British man who lived in Tokyo for some time, so I guess I don't know how accurate his description of things are, but I would assume it might sort of be because he lived in Tokyo himself for some time. So yeah, I thought it was really good. I ended up giving this 4 stars. Really interesting case if you are interested in things in Eastern countries, or if you're interested in true crime at all. It was a really interesting read and very tragic. I don't want to give too much away, but like the guy who did this crime, it made me really upset hearing about his life leading up to Lucy's disappearance. So if you're interested in that at all, definitely check it out. The audiobook was very good. Wow, that's all I have for you guys. That's what I ended up reading in January. I will be back tomorrow, I suppose, with my TBR for February. That's what it's called. So keep your eyes out for that if you're interested. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you later.